thank you so much for joining. We are really excited to have you, and we're going to show you some great stuff today. We've got some slides, which I'll share in a minute. And just to let everybody know, for those who have joined, you will be able to send us questions using the Q&A. We aren't going to use any polls today. There isn't a chat feature, unfortunately, but we're really excited to have so many of you with us, and we love that you have come from all over. We know that from you guys signing up, of course. We think probably about half of you are calculator users already, and half of you have indicated that you're not. So we'll cover off a couple of basic bits as well, and there'll be some follow-up for everyone who attends afterwards, just to get you started if you haven't started using it yet, and if you have. So we'll cover that off as well. We're going to show you a mix of slides and also a demo of our new feature and a couple of other bits as well. So we'll be kind of chopping and changing between a few things on the screen, so just bear with us while we do that as well when we need to. Sophie will be answering questions in the chat, and we should have a bit of time at the end as well. So anything we don't quite get to, I'll jump back off from sharing my screen and we can go through those as well. So we've got a brilliant turnout, so I think we'll just get going. So I'm going to share my screen again now. Lovely. So let me just play this one. Okay, so we are going to cover a little reminder just about who we are and what the calculator does, very quick. The difference between early insights and final footprints. We'll do a little demo, as I said, and then we'll talk about how you can use early insights to compare production ideas and different routes and sort of, things that you might want to think about, like shooting abroad, changing the number of shoot days and things like that. And then we'll do a quick run through of some other changes that we've made, some improvements based on your feedback before we finish up, and hopefully have time for some Q&A as well. So just a reminder that we have two aims. We are here to enable and support the industry to measure and reduce carbon emissions across advertising production. And what we've put together with the tool is essentially us giving you the means to do that measurement, and the analytics gives you the first steps towards making reductions, because you can see where those big pieces are. And what we've done with early insights is create this additional feature that gives you an extra way of doing this a little bit more quickly, for when you're up front of a production and you want to kind of check out some ideas or get a quick read before you start essentially your pre-production phase. So it's really strengthening our commitment to helping you measure and reduce. So just for those who are maybe new around here, just a little overview of our free services. So all of these are available free at the point of use. And we recommend them in this order because the training gives you the why. Then the calculator means you can put that why into practice by looking at your productions that are coming up and measuring those, and measuring them at the end as well. I'll come on to that in a second. Then you can use the data insights to get that reduction sort of inspiration. Then we've got resources, so resources guides, as well as our annual reports that we put together. And lastly, we put on events just like this one to help you kind of understand how to use these things really well. So this is one of those. So just a little overview of the calculator for those who maybe are less familiar. Now, we launched our own version of the Carbon Calculator just last year. So back in about July, I think it went live. Prior to that, we had another version of the calculator, which was owned by Albert, BAFTA's Albert, and licensed to us. So there were limited things we could do with it. So we decided our license was coming to an end. We would create something new that was bespoke to advertising. So that's what we've done. This is the calculator we're talking about. So some of you may have used the old one, and many of you will have transferred your sort of using to the new one. So what did we do to build the new one? So the methodology that we've built from scratch is underpins the whole tool, and it was reviewed by PwC and MediaSense. So we've kind of had a third party look at that, review it with us, and go through that from a kind of climate accounting, or sorry, carbon accounting point of view. The tool is developed for global use. So no matter where you're kind of conducting your activity, whether it be working in an office, or using a studio, for example, it will use the local electricity factor. It's connected via an API to the Climatique database. So all of our factors, apart from a very small number, are taken from the Climatique database, which pulls together lots of different carbon factor data sets from across the world. So many of our factors are actually from the UK government, from BEIS. Some come from other sources, but they all are kind of channeled into the calculator when they're needed via this API from Climatique, which means they're always up to date and always accurate. We have now two key features. So we used to just have one generic term, projects. Now we have two types of project. So everything you might have previously made, if you were using the tool for a little while since we launched it, would have been now called a final footprint. And some of you may have experimented already with early insights. Those are now available, and that's what we're going to mainly talk about today. Activities are organised by budget section in the final footprints, and by production stage as well for those. And we've really made it ad production focused to make it as easy as possible for you to gather that data. So for example, when you're talking about wardrobe, it's looking at number of outfits rather than, what was the weight of fabric used for this particular outfit. So it's much more in the language that we will understand. And you can also get reports, and you can download those, and you've got analytics in the tool as well to help you sort of analyze and understand where the reduction opportunities are, and to be able to share that data as well. So sending information at bidding stage, or perhaps getting stuff you can use in a PPM document is really, really simple now. So as I said, we've got two types of project now. So those who've logged in the last week, the early insights went live last week, will notice that when they hit that add button, they now get a choice of two things. So a final footprint would be a project like you would have made before. And an early insight is the new version, the new feature. So I'm just going to run you through the differences between these two features. So early insights, use at an early stage. Use when you're scripting or you're bidding. And what that's giving you is ballpark estimates based on your educated guesses. And we've got lots of drop downs in there for you to select between. So there's not too much you have to kind of come up with out of thin air to compare different ideas. And we'll give you some examples of comparing different options in a bit. The entry is super simple and is across 10 activity areas. And it gives you reduction ideas to implement now, i.e. things you can do going forward on the production that you're about to start, or that you're bidding on, or that you're maybe putting a budget together for. Things you can change before they happen. It's visible to anyone at your company. There are basic in-tool analytics, so a pie chart and some numbers to accompany that. There's a basic PDF report, which I'll show you an example of in a bit. And they just have one status. They aren't sort of in progress or finished. They are just existing as items. And they don't go into the AdGreen dataset because ultimately a lot of these are probably going to be tests or ideas to kind of, try things out. They're not necessarily going to be projects that definitely have happened. So on the contrary, final footprints, you're going to use those when you're wrapping, when you have a sort of actual picture of your production. You know how many people did come to your shoot, for example. You had a settled location of where that shoot was happening. You know exactly how many catering heads you had. You've made all those decisions. You have that information. Because it's after the shoot, it's going to give you reduction ideas that you can use for longer term plans. So we're talking about things like assessing your impact over a period of time, perhaps that's a year or 6 months, and seeing where those big things are. It's visible to your company, just like early insights, but also to any company that you add to your final footprint. So there's a details pane, just like there is in early insights, and you're able to manage companies and add other companies. So for example, if you're an agency, you might add the brand so they can see it too. And you might also add a production company so that they can enter information as well. So it means that everyone can collaborate, everyone can see the information. So there's lots of visibility. Final footprints also give you more detailed in-tool analytics and a more detailed report. And they also have two states. So in progress for anything that you're currently working on, and finished for when you're finished. The finished projects go into our data set because we assume that those happened and that they aren't tests if you're marking them as finished. And we do a little bit of cleanup at the end of the year, just in case there's any test projects that have been kind of marked as finished. But generally speaking, finished is for when you've completed that footprint. You can reopen them, no problem at all. And you'll also be able to get a project list export to Excel. So much more flexibility, but much more detail required, but they give you much more sort of insight. So we're going to cover early insights today because that's our new feature. So how we can use those, how exactly you put information in. So now I'm going to give you a little demo. So just bear with me while I switch screens. Okay. So I have already logged in here and I've made a few I made earlier, but I'm going to show you this from scratch. Oh, I'm just going to log in again. This is what happens when you try and get organized half an hour before your event. 1 second. Okay. So my final footprints are all on this tab here, and my early insights are here. So if any of you are wondering where your projects have gone that you might have created before last week, they will be under final footprints. So you can see here we've got lots of test projects that we create to kind of test different things when we're sort of in development, and also just seeing how people will use it. We can kind of give that a test run as well. So back to early insights. You'll see we've got this add button, and if I add it, or press it, sorry, we've got select a type of project. Now there's quite a lot of text here, and that's really because this is a new feature. We want to make sure people understand the difference between the two. So if they haven't been on this webinar, for example, they know which is which they should pick. Over time, we might simplify this and just sort of put a bit less text here, but for now it's so that you guys know which one to select. So we're going to select early insight. I'm just going to get something else ready on my other screen. There we go. Okay, so to set one up is really simple. You just require a name. So we'll call it webinar. And then we need to tell the early insight where we're going to be based. So we'll go for the United Kingdom. Yes, I think this one will have a shoot. And we'll say it's going to be 3 shoot days. This question here is something we also ask on final footprints, and it's really a data gathering for us. It doesn't make any difference to how the early insight is laid out or the calculations. It's just so that we can track, and you can track, how many of these projects do incorporate existing material or not. So if they're adaptations or using existing footage. So I'll go ahead and continue. And that's our early insight created. Really simple, really quick. So I'm now going to run through each section of this. An important thing at the moment is every time you make a change, hit this estimate button. That will kind of recalculate the total and start to give you a pie chart once you've got enough data in there as well. So I'll talk a little bit about how these sections work behind the scenes as we go through, but on each one, there is a tooltip. We don't make these tooltips for fun. Well, we do, but they have great information for you guys. So if you're unsure about anything and you see this little eye, do click on it because it does give you interesting and useful information. But you'll see on the bottom of all of them that we have this text here. For more information on the benchmarks and assumptions used, you can click and you'll see a web page. That web page, that link, sorry, will bring you to this web page. And this web page breaks down how all of the activities are calculated and the benchmarks and assumptions that we use both in early insights and in final footprints. So if you have any questions on those, you can go to this page to hit that link in any of those tooltips. I won't go into detail on them. I'll run through a few kind of highlight things or headline things as we go through, but just so you know that's there and where it goes. So let's get started. So I'm going to just roughly estimate a job as I go through. This isn't necessarily a real job. It's just an example to show you how this works. So I'm going to add 20 days in pre-production. So perhaps I'm a production company and I've got some PM time, some producer time, maybe a PA. Maybe I've got some pre-production time for art department, so anyone who's sort of working in pre-production on the job. Add all those together. And the same for post-production. So again, maybe I've got some producer time, a couple of wrap days for a PM, and obviously some post as well. So I'm going to put 10 in here. I'm going to hit estimate. Now, I can either hit estimate right at the end, or I can do it as I go along. It's really up to you. But that button has to be pressed for these things to essentially be added to your final footprint. Now, before I move on, so workspaces, this will behind the scenes assume that half of these days are at home and half of them are in the office. And for post-production, a third of them are at home, a third in a suite, and a third in the office. So we've made lots of assumptions behind the scenes to make this really quick for you guys to do. So next up, people transport. So I've got 3 options here, flight and rail, which look exactly the same as they would in a final footprint, but also car/taxi. So we're going to do car/taxi. And now I'm going to add in a number of car journeys that I think will happen for this job. Now, I'm thinking this is a 3-day shoot. I'm thinking 20 people might drive a car. Some other people will be in trucks. They're going to go back and forth. So I'm going to put 120 car journeys. So that's 20 people doing 2 journeys each for 3 days, so 120. And I'm going to assume they're all coming locally. Perhaps this is a shoot in London. However, you have got an option for further away. So if you know a few of your crew might be coming from further afield, maybe bringing some special equipment, or if your project was shooting sort of more rurally, for example, and you wanted to assume a few more people were going to be coming from further away and less local crew, you can do that too. So we'll add that one on. Estimate. And you can see we're going to start building a picture of this shoot when it loads. There we go. So next up, I'm going to add my equipment, transport and couriers. Now here, we've got a little drop down. So I can decide if it's small, medium, large or extra large. Now, having done the research for this, I would say there's probably more vans and trucks than you think when you think about any drop-offs you might have as well. Even if it's a small shoot, you might have some catering drop-off or some equipment drop-off. So probably overestimate rather than underestimate. So I'm going to select a medium size sort of truck and van unit, in addition to my 20 crew coming in cars or my 20 people, because they could be cast or they might be agency or client. And I'm going to say they're coming from all local, but I have got the option to say they're half and half, or that they're mostly further or all further. So there's different options for you there. So add that one on. That's added a really, we can see that this is the main chunk now of my project so far. We're not going to have any accommodation in my imaginary fantasy shoot. Non-shooting spaces, I'm going to assume we're going to do 4 days worth of casting and fitting, pre-production activities that are happening to do with the shoot, so associated with the shoot. So I'm going to add those on as well. Very tiny, but still there. Shooting spaces. So here I get 3 options: traditional studio, virtual studio, and generators. So you'll notice we don't have locations, and that's because it's very difficult, as in mains powered locations. It's very difficult to come up with benchmarks for locations. So if you are doing a location, we advise you to either use a traditional studio and the size that you require, or to use a generator if you think you'll have a generator. Now you'll notice as well, Shooting Spaces has a couple of extra tooltips. And these ones will give you a bit of extra information. So I'm going to say we're doing a 3-day shoot. We're going to be, and you see this goes grey because I need to also select the size. We're going to be in a medium size studio, but if I wasn't sure, I can select this little tooltip and it tells me lots of extra information about the sort of examples of the studios that are this size. So do have a little click on that. The same thing happens for virtual studios. And when it comes to generators, you get some fun pictures. So these are all there to help you. All of these are just drop downs. And same with generators. So some examples there for you. So I'm going to add these 3 days in the studio. If you already know where you're going to shoot and that it's going to be on a renewable tariff, maybe you always shoot in the same place, you know it's on renewables, you can select that option. But most people won't know at this early stage if they're kind of comparing ideas or perhaps bidding. Now, catering. Yes, I'm going to cater. In this particular case, because it's one I made earlier that I need to demonstrate later, I will be serving meat, but I wouldn't normally. And I'm going to say that I'm going to have, so I've got 20 people driving, and I've got these 18 trucks. So I'm going to say 38 people per shoot day. I'm going to add those on as well. And this is going to multiply those amount of people by the shoot days that I've specified. So again, this is quite a big chunk now that we've added it. So we can see this here, this catering chunk. Next up, wardrobe. So I'm going to say I've got 3 cast and they're wearing the same outfit for 3 days, poor them. And I'm going to say 3 outfits. Add those on as well. And that is an average of all the different factors we have in the final footprint. So in final footprints, you can choose between winter outfit, a summer outfit, and a sort of autumn spring outfit, and whether it's a child or adult. So here we take an average of all of those, so you don't need to worry about sort of making those specific sort of indications. Now, when it comes to art department, first of all, meters and feet for our friends in other countries that use different metrics, different units. We've worked with a production designer to look at how much of each material that might go into a set build would be used for the set builds of these sizes. Now you might think, oh, I do a set build way larger than extra large. That's fine. Just think about how big it's going to be, and you can tell us you're using 4 extra larges or 6 or 10. So let us know. You can just change that number. I'm going to go with 1 medium set. Estimate. Taking its time because it knows that I've got people on a call waiting to see this. It's not normally this slow, I would say. Just keeping me in suspense. What's it going to be? Okay, feel for me, people on this call. Come on. There we go. Oh, did it happen? That's right. Good time for a sip of water. There we go. Okay. Now the final piece is data storage. So those who use the old tool might remember that we didn't include cloud storage. We now do. So in a final footprint, you can add drives, you can add LTO tapes, and you can add cloud storage, all as separate pieces. And what we've done here in data storage is we have asked users to put in how many hard drives they're going to use and what size they are. And then what we will do is take that size and the number of drives, and we will estimate an amount of cloud storage for you as well. And what we will assume is that from your amount of, your size of drives, that amount times 1 if you've got 2 drives, because we'll assume one's a master, one's a backup. If you're using more than 2 drives, we'll do a calculation to work out how much we think is going to be stored as opposed to kind of as a backup. And we'll assume there's going to be 3 copies of that. So perhaps one lives with the production company on their cloud storage, one with the agency on their cloud storage, and another perhaps in one of the post companies. So we've chosen 3 times. And we've also said that we've used the concept of saving your financial information. So in the UK, that's generally meant to be 7 years, best practice. So we've assumed that this data will be stored for 7 years. Now, we know some people will clean up their cloud storage more often than that, and we know some people will never look at it. So this gives us something to pin this assumption to, even if it isn't what exactly everyone does. So I'm going to say we're going to use 2 drives. They're going to be 8 terabytes. If I reuse old drives, that's fine. I can say here, it just takes away the drive amount of carbon, which actually is relatively small compared to the cloud storage. So I'm now going to add that on super quick that time. And you can see that the data storage is actually a really big piece of this pie, which is probably going to be something you can't do very much about. So we're going to start thinking about what can we do with these other pieces? That's where we can kind of use this pie chart to help us. So I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but while I'm still here, I just want to draw your attention to one extra thing, which is this little chatbot down here. So when I click on this, if I'm stuck, I can use this chatbot to give me, I've actually already filled it in before, but it gives you some information about the tool, and there's various things you can hit to or select from to get extra help. And if you are still struggling, there's an email address here as well. So just so you know where you can go for help. Now, one of the things that we do have on here, I've already clicked this, we can't see it, is reporting a bug. This is obviously new development for us. It came out a week ago, and we'd love to know if you find a bug, because we'd love to be able to get our developers to fix it ASAP. So if you click on that bug sort of option, it will take you to our very short survey. It's 2 pages, but only because you can report a bug, but you can also tell us about an improvement request. So something you'd like to see that maybe isn't happening at the moment, or something that you think just needs a small tweak to make it read better or, you know, be more explanatory to the users. So please tell us about those things. Please use it so that we can find those bugs and get them fixed. And one other thing I just want to draw your attention to, so you've got this download to PDF option. That will give you a report that looks like this. This is obviously not this project, it's a different amount of carbon, but it will give you a basic report. So you've got all your different elements here, what they sort of represent on the pie chart, and then a list underneath, which covers off where you're shooting, where your pre-production and post-production is happening, how many shoot days you've got, and also a bit of information about the things that you've put in. So that's what you'll get if you hit that download to PDF button. And the other thing you can do is reset your estimate. So if you're like, oh no, I just need to start this again, you can reset it. So you can do that here. Now you're back to 0 and you can just quickly start again. You can also remove items just by deleting out any numbers you've put in. So you've got that option as well. So you can edit them, you can change them, just hit estimate each time. And by removing the numbers in all the boxes for each section and estimating again, it will kind of reset just that one section back to 0. So you've got that flexibility as well. Okay, so I'm just going to come back to my slides now, so bear with me. I also just wanted to point out one other improvement we've made. So we had quite a few users get in touch to let us know that where we used to have complete and open, or completed and open, people thought the open meant you could click on it to open up the final footprint, or the project as it was then. So we've actually updated our wording and our colours. So we now have in progress and finished. So you can see here that you've got the same campaign, in progress and then finished. And the way to mark it as finished is to hit the 3 dots on the right-hand side and just click the mark as finished button. Any user who's working on the project can do that, and anyone can reopen it. So you can see at the bottom of the slide there, revert to in progress. And we've also just improved how we communicate which companies are involved as well. So you can see there's a created by little logo. If you hover over that, it will tell you who it is in case they've not got a picture. If a brand has been added, it will show you the brand as well, and any other companies that have been added too. So a bit more information for you to kind of differentiate between your final footprints. So just to let you know, we've made other improvements too. So now to the kind of nitty-gritty of why early insights can be so powerful for you guys. It's really about comparing ideas. So first of all, I just want to talk about comparing shoot locations. So you might have some options to shoot something, say in the UK, or perhaps you're looking to shoot something where you might need good weather at the time you need to shoot it, and you're wondering if the UK will deliver. So perhaps you're thinking about going somewhere else. So this is a completely hypothetical situation, but we'll show you an option in a minute to change things. So first of all, you'll use this details panel to the right-hand side. So you might have noticed, actually, I'll just show you on the, just bear with me 1 second. On here, if I go up here and there's details here, I can edit this and change any of these items. So I can change the countries and I can change the number of shoot days. So just so everyone knows what that is now. So as you can see, it's the panel on the right-hand side. So if I select a different country in that details panel, it will automatically update multiple calculations. If I update the pre and post country, it will change the calculation for workspaces because there's an electricity factor local to that country. And if I change the shoot country, it will change multiple things. So equipment transport, because there are country by country freight factors that are used. And then a couple that use electricity again, so non-shooting spaces and shooting spaces. That would be for studios rather than generators. And then we also make an assumption on your behalf as to whether waste is likely to be sent to landfill or is combusted. So for EU countries and the UK, we assume it's going to be going to a combustion facility. And for many other places, we assume it's going to landfill. So we make that assumption on your behalf as well. So every time you change those countries, those calculations will change automatically. So I'm just going to look at a 3-day shoot in London. So this is exactly the one that we just did. This is the number we came out at, 7.285. Now I'm going to change that country to South Africa. And what happens then is all areas are automatically updated as per that previous slide, except workspaces, because we didn't change the pre or the post country. People transport and data storage, as they don't have any electricity or freight or waste elements. So those are staying the same, but everything else has been automatically updated. Plus, I would manually add people transport, a kind of flight option. So I've still got those cars that we put in, but I'm also going to add 4 business class return flights. Now you might think, oh, we'd always go in economy. That's fine. You can put in whatever you want. And you can also make the sort of comparison between business and economy. You can change that and re-estimate, see what it comes out at. I'm also going to add accommodation. So I'm going to think that these 4 people are going to stay 7 nights. So that's 28 nights in total, if my maths is right. And the calculation automatically adds 2 meals per person per day and drinks as well, but they're very small. And now our shoot sort of pie chart looks like this. So we can see a massive part of this pie chart is now people transport, and the total is now 61 tons compared to our 7. So to see that a bit easier, here's this comparison. So you saw how quickly I was able to put that early insight together. You can see how quickly you'd be able to change it to get to this 3-day shoot in South Africa instead of a 3-day shoot in London. So simply changing that country and adding on the flights that would be needed and the accommodation, we've leapt up from 7 tons, just over 7, to just over 61 tons. It's a massive, massive jump. So it gives you the ability to look at different ideas. And if you're going to do this perhaps at bidding stage, if the brand are asking you for this along with the agency, along with your budget and your treatment, this gives you a chance to kind of play around with different ideas and to present them at the same time. So this, really gives you that ability. Now, the next one we're going to look at is changing the number of shoot days. So if, again, in that details panel, if we change that, it changes a few calculations automatically, just like the country does. So it's going to change equipment transport, because it's looking at the number of trucks times shoot days, and catering, because it's going to look at number of people times shoot days. But others need to be updated by you. So for example, people transport, that one you might be including car journeys for pre and post as well. So shoot days wouldn't necessarily impact that in the same way. And also shooting spaces, because as you saw, we've got traditional studio, we've got virtual studio, and we've got generator. And you might be doing different times, a different number of days in each one that don't necessarily add up to your number of shoot days, because you might also have a build or a wrap day, for example. So there are places where you need to kind of do things based on what you're thinking for your particular project. And you might also need to think about your other activities. If you're going from, say, 5 shoot days to 1, maybe you'd have less pre-production, less post-production, less casting, less wardrobe, etc. So there's just things to consider. But as you've seen, it's very quick to make those changes and to just review everything and pop in a different number if you need to. So if we take our previous 3-day shoot in London, again, 285 tons. And then if we go to a 1-day shoot, so we can see here, the ones that are adjusted manually are in red. So people transport and shooting spaces, as we said. So instead of our 120 car journeys, that's now going to be just those 40, just 20 people going back and forth. And shooting spaces, I need to update that from 3 days to 1 day. But our equipment transport and our catering are going to be updated automatically, and everything else will remain the same. Now, again, to see this kind of comparison, so we've got a 3-day shoot in London, 7.285 versus a 1-day shoot, 4.182. And I'm saying this like it might not be obvious. I'm sure it probably is to most of you, just in the same way that it would cost less to do a 1-day shoot, although there are savings in different areas. It's just something that kind of backs up the decision making or shows an awareness of the carbon that's produced from your kind of chosen route. So it gives you it's a tool in your toolbox, essentially. So the next part will be slightly tricky because without the ability to either shout out or use a chat function, we'd love your thoughts. So I'd like you to pose it as a question in the chat. And Sophie is on the, question in the Q&A section. Sophie is on the questions. What else could you compare using early insights? So pop a few things in that Q&A. We obviously won't really answer them, but pop them in there. Because I think hopefully you can see that there are lots of different things you could try out. As I said, with that South Africa option, you could see about flying in economy. You can add multiple flight entries, multiple car entries, multiple rail entries. So you can add perhaps 1 flight in business and the other 3 in economy. So you can compare different things. You can compare sort of, different sizes of sets, different sizes of units. So even within those little sections, you can make comparisons. And you can also compare different ideas. So I'm going to assume, because I can't see, that a number of you have put some suggestions in that Q&A box. And I'm going to just talk through a couple of other ideas that we've got that you could use this for. So local versus further away. So thinking about even just within your own country, maybe not requiring any flights, you could look at crew and equipment trucks, for example, coming locally, majority coming locally, or from further away because you're shooting more rurally, or like I said, maybe there's some specialist equipment. You could compare a virtual studio to a traditional one. So the virtual studio factor that we use, the benchmark that we use, is higher than traditional because of the different equipment that is there. But there are lots of other variables. So you might have no set build, for example. So it's hard for us to definitively say this is better than that because your shoot might have something different to someone else's shoot. So there's lots of things you can consider, but this tool allows you to kind of look at those different options. You might also need to create footage to go on the LED screen, perhaps overseas, and send someone over to do that. So hopefully you do it remotely, but you might not. So there's different things that might impact. It's not just a straight comparison between the actual studio, but this tool allows you to add in those other elements that might apply still. Also, you could look at perhaps beef versus no meat. If you want to kind of get a definitive answer on that, I think it's pretty obvious what it will be, but that allows you to see that and visualize it. Using a generator at location versus a set build, perhaps in a studio. Again, as I said, we don't yet have any location benchmarks for tied-in power or mains power. So it's about looking at a generator for that one, or using a studio as a proxy. Perhaps you've got an extra large set build and extra large studio to accommodate that versus a much smaller set and a smaller studio, and perhaps less crew, less shoot days because you don't need, or less build time in the studio. So lots of things you can compare across the tool using that functionality. And I would just say as well, while we're here, if you do need to get any more detailed analysis, you can obviously use a final footprint at the start. That's completely up to you. If you need more detailed information and you're looking to kind of get a bit more information out of your footprint and put a bit more kind of specific information in. So for example, if you want to look at a renewably powered battery generator, for example, you can do that in final footprints. If you want to specify whether you're working from home or in an office in more detail rather than us making that assumption for you, again, you can use final footprints. If you're shooting in multiple locations, final footprints, or you could make more than one early insight. You can make one for one country, one for another. So it's flexible. We're trying to give you different kind of options to use. So I'm going to stop sharing and see if we have any questions. Sophie. How are we doing on our Q&A?
Hi.
Hello.
We're doing very well. We're doing very well, and I'm just going through most of them. So I've just got one that I'm answering at the moment about how this person generally holds spaces and transport in their head as the largest areas of the footprint, which I agree, they're the same for me too. But he noticed that in your UK example, data accounts for 30 to 50% of the footprint. It sounds like a lot of the emissions that we can't really control, and just wondering if that's correct.
That is true. So data storage is something or cloud storage specifically, is something we've known for a while to be very impactful, but we didn't have the means to measure it in the old tool. So it's something that was important to us to add into the new one. Now, if you wanted to get a picture kind of knowing that cloud storage is likely to be your biggest piece, but not really wanting to kind of count it, if you like, in your early insight, because you want to focus on things you can control, then obviously you can just not fill that section in. If anything isn't relevant, like I showed you, I didn't worry about accommodation to start with. I didn't worry about that, and I just didn't include it. So if you wanted to create your early insight, not include that data storage part to start with, just to kind of get a sense of where your big pieces are after that piece, which is likely to be the biggest, then you're very welcome to do that. And the reason we haven't really talked about it much before, say in our previous annual reviews, is because we didn't have the data to kind of back it up. So we're hoping now that we have this option in final footprints that we'll start to be able to talk about that a little bit more and show people just how big that is. So this is when it becomes important to have a kind of a data cleanliness policy and make sure someone is kind of going into those cloud storages and deleting things after a certain amount of time that's perhaps agreed between brand and agency or agency and production company. So yes, you're right, it will probably be the biggest, but if you want to kind of exclude that just for test purposes to check out ideas, you're very welcome to do so. Now, Sophie.
Great. Yeah. Next one. Thank you very much. We have another question here, which is asking about the use of AI queries during pre or post-production.
So AI is something we're looking to measure. I'm also not, just to say, I'm not sure if this will automatically shut off at 3:45. So I'm going to assume it will, but if it goes on, great. There will be a post-session email with some follow-up for you. So look out for that if we do get cut off. We are looking to measure AI. But at the moment, we haven't found a way to do it in a way that people are measuring. So we found a carbon per prompt or per 1,000 prompts. But very often people are not really looking or tracking how many prompts they're making. So we're keeping an eye on it, and it's something we'd love to add in the future. So if you have a kind of opinion on it or a thought on how we might be able to track it, or something that you might be tracking in your own company that we could use as an input in the tool, please get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. I'm just going to answer Peggy's question as well, because I can see it. Your international emissions come from various sources. So when it comes to electricity, they're from the IEA. And when it comes to hotels, they're from BEIS, the UK government. They use a study that looked at different emissions across countries. And the hotel factors include lots of different things, not just electricity, which is why you can't stipulate that your accommodation is renewable, because it's not a kind of straight up electricity factor. And the freight comes from GLEC, which is I think the General Logistics Emissions Council. So they come from different sources that Climatique have pulled together and that we then access. I think that's it. And I'm going to just put my slides back on the screen because I just want to show you next steps, what to do now. So, two rogue icons. So if you haven't done so already, sign up for a free account. Once you've done that, so you can log in, You can compare ideas, as we've shown, with early insights. You can, oh, this has gone really awry. Maybe I shouldn't have gone back on the screen. Review data insights. You can, there we go, log the actual in a final footprint, as we discussed at the beginning. And you can collaborate on those final footprints and share information, either by adding another company to your final footprint or by sharing the report that you get from both early insights and final footprints. So I will leave it there. And if you'd like to find out any more, everything is on our website. Thank you so much to Get Set Hire for supporting us for the previous few years in putting on all of these events for you guys. We couldn't do it without their support. And yeah, drop us a line if you need anything. We're info@, or if it's calculator specific, support@, weareadgreen.org.